Welcome back to another episode of the Lender Podcast. Of course, I'm Bryce. I'm your host, and today we are with Miss Ellen Hicks. Ellen, thanks so much for being here.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
I think Ellen, this is kind of monumental because I think you're the first female guest speaker that we've had on the podcast. So,
Well,
congratulations.
thank you. There's got to be a first, so I guess I'll
I
do
know,
it.
right? Right? No, this will be great.
Yeah.
Okay, give us your little your elevator pitch, kind of your background. Like, tell us your backstory, either in real estate or otherwise, and then how you kind of got into the lending space.
Yeah, for sure. So I graduated college back in 2021, so I'm a little young. But I started at Conventus, where I am now, right after I graduated. Been there ever since. I did start as a sales analyst, which was pretty much like a loan officer assistant. And then about 6 months into that, I got promoted to be a full-time loan officer. So now I'm on my own, finding leads, doing loans. And honestly, I knew I wanted to be in real estate, but I wasn't sure what part of real estate. My mom was a realtor, so I got to see all kinds of that side of things. Honestly, for me, that was not where I wanted to be. So when I got, the opportunity to come be at Conventus and be on the lending side of things, that was super interesting to me, just because I can deal with numbers all day and I'm not, having to run around crazy, calling, texting, driving people,
For sure, for sure.
that
Showing 12
everywhere.
houses and then having all of
Yeah.
them say no, sorry, we don't want to move forward, or we went with
Right.
another agent. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So honestly, when I graduated, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I majored in economics and finance, really just hoping to get some sort of job after college. But like I said, this job just kind of fell into my lap and it's been great. I love it. I don't really see myself doing anything else right now. So, yeah.
Okay, and that was going to be my question. So it sounds like you did go to school for finance or business or something of some
Yeah.
sort.
Yeah. So I went to Center College. It's a small school up in Kentucky. I was actually a college athlete there too. So I played 4 years of college basketball. And then, I majored in economics and finance just because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I figured if I just do that, maybe I'll find something. And so, it was probably like a week before I graduated. Conventus reached out to me and here we are 3 years later. So
Okay. So when you were getting close to graduating, were you like sweating bullets because you're like, I don't have a job, I don't know what I want to do, and then this was kind of your saving grace?
yeah, I wouldn't say I was sweating bullets because I was like, okay, if I don't get a job for a couple months, I'll be okay. But it wasn't like I wasn't looking. So I was like,
Got
I
it.
wanted to kind of graduate knowing my next step. So thankfully they, about a week before it all fell into place.
That's
So
great. No, I
yeah.
love it. Okay. And then tell me kind of what like your day-to-day looks like at Conventus. You get in the office eight or nine, or maybe even work remote, but
Yeah.
what does kind of your full day look like from start to finish?
Yeah. So Conventus is actually based out of San Francisco. That is where our main office is. And then we have loan officers all around the United States. So I am personally in Nashville, born and raised here. Obviously went to school in Kentucky, but came back. So I do work fully remote, which, has its pros and cons. We can maybe talk about that at a later time. But yeah, so I mean, I typically try to log on around, 9 o'clock. Most of my team is on the West Coast, so that's, 7 o'clock for them.
Mm.
So when I get on at about 9, I catch up on any emails that came in after hours, just catch up and get ready for the day ahead. Normally my team will get on about, 9, 8 or 9 Pacific time. So it's about 10 or 11 my time. And so that's when I can really start, focusing on my current loans in the pipeline. I send a ton of follow-ups, making sure we're getting the title docs we need, the insurance docs we need. If we need any borrower documents, send the file into underwriting. That's pretty much what it looks like. Obviously, if I have a slow day, I'll, get out and try and find some new clients. Whether that's searching Facebook groups, LinkedIn, just calling past clients that haven't done a deal with me in a while, just, check in, see what's going on with them. Some events, some meetups, all those types of things. But yeah, I would say my day to day is mostly spent, on the computer, just, working on new deals, finding new deals, making sure the ones in process are going to close. So
Right, right. Okay, okay. Tell me about your kind of your Instagram strategy, or maybe just like your lead strategy as a whole,
yeah,
because I've been doing some snooping, and your Instagram is actually pretty impressive. I really like
thank
the
you.
different graphics, the different images
Yeah,
of the homes, and just like I feel like you're doing a really good job there.
thank you.
And I feel like a lot of lenders, that's definitely an area where most people lack.
Mhm.
And so what strategy, and I think the answer is probably all the above, but what strategy has been most effective for you as far as finding leads and clients?
Yeah. So I'll start first just talking about my Instagram. I knew that I needed to do something within social media to get my name out there, to find, more leads. And I really think I started my Instagram maybe 6 months ago. Uh, I tell people all the time, like I live on social media. So I'm like, why not like bring, my work into social media? And I'm young and, it's fun to create graphics like that. And I wouldn't say like I've ever really done that, but now that I've started the Instagram, I just know how big it can grow. I mean, you look at all these influencers, right? They have hundreds and thousands of followers by just, finding their niche and then just posting, right? So I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'll make my niche lending. Um, and, I think it's also just fun for clients to see, their lender excited about their project and their lender, showcasing their project. I do a lot of, before and afters because I think, just one of the most rewarding things in this business is being able to see those before and after pictures for my flippers, especially the first timers. I think
For
those are
sure.
always fun. So yeah, I think just, showcasing it just because, I mean, social media, like it, I mean, it's the place to be. Like if
Right.
you want to, I don't know, gain popularity or find new things, it's like, go to social media, right? If you want a new recipe, if you want a new workout routine, right? Like it's all on social media. So I just figured, I might as well bring the lending into the social media side. And I do think it's been awesome. I wouldn't say I get, a ton of business from that just yet, but again, everybody starts somewhere.
Right.
So I would say most of my business right now probably comes from local Facebook groups. I really try to focus on, Tennessee, Middle Tennessee specifically, just because I'm here and that way I can, go see the client project and not fly, 3 hours to go see the
Right. Right.
project. But yeah, I think for somebody who probably hasn't jumped into that social media side and is in, the world of business that we're in, I definitely think it's worth it. It takes a lot of time, right? And I think you hear a lot with social media, like you have to be consistent, you have to be consistent, you have to be consistent. So
Right.
that's like you've got to like post every day, and
Right. Right.
I don't even do that yet. But I think Instagram specifically could be a really big platform to help other loan officers like us grow. So
Hmm. So what, and I kind of touched on this before, but one thing that a lot of lenders, at least that I've seen in this space, a lot of lenders aren't good at is social media. But also, if you think about it, like most of the lenders that I speak to, and myself personally, like we're older than you are, and so like we're just like a bunch of, and I'm 32, so I wouldn't say I'm like that old, but you get a lot of lenders that are like in their 40s, 50s, 60s who have been doing this for 20 years, and I
Mhm.
wouldn't say they're resistant to change,
Yeah.
but it's definitely not like at the forefront of their mind, right? Like you don't see a lot of 60-year-old dudes that are creating Instagram accounts and promoting it heavily, right? So and you already touched on this a little bit, but what if you had like any piece of advice or any tip for growing your social media, or maybe not even necessarily from like a follower count, but just like an
Mhm.
engagement perspective, like what advice would you give to those people who have no social media presence following whatsoever?
I think first is just do it, right? I mean, you hear that all the time is like you just have to go for it. You just have to do it. I think as far as like engagement, say you're, a little bit older you're like, I don't want to be on Instagram at all. Maybe fine, maybe hire somebody to work for you to do, the
That's a
social
good point.
media, aspect of things. I mean, it's easy, obviously, for me because I am younger and I've grown up in the generation where it's just social media is,
Everything.
the end all be all. But yeah, no, I think for somebody that's older is maybe just start small. Just follow a couple people, see what they post, and then go from there. But the bottom line is you just got to do it, right? You just got to do it, and you just got to go for it. So
Yeah, that's very good advice. Very good advice. I so my as of late, actually, for about the last 6 months as well, I've really been focusing hard on growing my Instagram.
yeah.
But I have found that like lending is such a very specific niche that it doesn't really cater to a lot of people. So
Mhm.
one thing that I've personally found is just talking general like finance or business or money and then kind of like funneling people in that way has actually been really effective for me. So like
That's awesome.
I'll post so like I make fun of Dave Ramsey all the time because I
Yeah.
can't stand the guy, but um those types of posts where I kind of shit on Dave is like they seem to do well. They get a lot of like engagement and comments and like honestly they get a lot of like hate comments, but it's all about engagement, right? Like I'm all for the engagement bait, but
Right.
I've used that a lot to actually funnel people into being either investors or being borrowers, believe it or not. I'll have a lot of people who are like, hey, like I'm looking to level up my finances. How do I do that? And then I've,
Mhm.
said, well, hey, have you ever thought about like flipping houses? That's kind of how we built our wealth
Yeah.
and then move them in that way. And so that's actually been fairly effective. So I,
Yeah.
take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with that because I think the more relatable you can make your posts, or like you, for example, adding in, Dave Ramsey, who everybody knows
Right.
is gonna gain traction because people, they have something they can relate to. So I think, like just for me specifically, I love, highlighting places in Nashville.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's just like, oh, well, do a flip here and you're 5 minutes from, like the football stadium or something like that.
Yeah.
But I just think making it relatable so that people want to read it and want to look at it is also another big key into growing that presence.
That's a good point. I had a video go. I shouldn't say like super viral, but like like it probably got five
Wow.
hundred thousand views.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's
Like it was,
awesome. Yeah.
yeah, like it was more than I thought. But it was just my personal house tour. I live in Idaho, so it's just
Okay.
my personal house tour in Idaho. And when I said, hey, this is our house in Idaho Falls, and this is how much it cost to build, and I
Yeah.
walked through and did all that, I could not tell you how many people commented who are in the local area that's like, oh, I know that place, or like,
Yeah.
and it's like it's dumb because of course I'm taking a video in Idaho,
Yeah.
so of course like people are like, well, yeah, it's in Idaho, but for whatever reason, when you see some place that personally, like you've driven past that sign or that store or that road or whatever,
Mhm.
and then you see it on your screen, it like I don't know why, but it has that extra
Yeah.
like
No, I
punch to
agree.
it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. I see like, a house down the street from me because I'm in an area that's just like crazy development right now. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can walk to that,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It just hits a little bit
Yeah, it's
stronger.
always cool to, make a connection of some sort.
Right, right. No, I love it. Have you found any other platforms that have like performed well for you, or are you like mainly focused on Instagram? And I know you
Yeah,
said Facebook a little bit as well.
yeah, I do a little bit on Facebook. I don't do a ton of promoting, I would say, on Facebook. Obviously I'd love to get into TikTok, but to be honest, I mean, is it like going to be a thing in a year? Like you never
Yeah,
know.
that's a good point. Yeah, good question.
Like why focus and put all my energy into, something like that where, I'm pretty confident Instagram is going to be here for a while. But I mean TikTok, I mean
Who
that would be
knows?
a huge
Yeah.
platform, right? And to be honest, I haven't done a lot of that. Just because I'd rather focus on my Instagram and, scrolling the Facebook and doing all the LinkedIn stuff. But, I think for somebody that's really, really trying to put themselves out there, get out there, just put their face on other people's screen, I think TikTok would be probably like a perfect spot to
Absolutely.
start.
Yeah, and you see like TikTok maybe more so like in the past, but even still like people were getting millions of followers with just like a couple of videos. I
Yeah.
think as the platform has become more saturated, excuse me, I think that's probably less so, but there's still a lot of traction that can be gained. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, and I think TikTok is another one where if you relate to it or you see something that you like it will show up, right? So you watch one video about real estate investing or one video about lending, then here come five more about it. So that I feel like it's an easier way to get your name out there. But you probably do have to be a little bit more strategic about what you post on TikTok, maybe more informational videos or,
Right.
some tours. Like for example, for me, I'd love to video a before of a house that I've, given a loan on and then go video the after project and then post that. So, I've got all these great ideas. It's just time to put them in.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I always joke that I need a 36-hour day. I need like a 12-hour
yep.
day for work, a 12-hour day for fun, and another 12 hours for like sleep,
Yeah,
So
exactly.
if you could figure that out for me, that would be great.
I'll try my best.
I want to switch gears a second and ask you. So a lot of lenders that we speak to, they kind of have this like traditional path or trajectory that they followed to get into lending, and most of the time that is like they've bought a bunch of rental properties, and then that kind of isn't necessarily for them, and then they move into the fix and flip, and they do that for a while, and they're like, this is still too involved. I don't really want to do this, and then they kind of take all the proceeds that they made from flipping and move it into lending. So I would say it's very atypical for you to come fresh out of college and go directly into lending.
Yeah.
Has that been difficult, or have there been any like roadblocks or hurdles that you've kind of had to jump through because you weren't, you didn't have that previous experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say I've had to learn a lot on my own ever since, starting being a lender, because kind of what all I knew was I'm going to, give people a loan. They're going to pay an interest rate, right? And there's that. But, thankfully when I started here, I got to, shadow a loan officer for, like I said, about six to 8 months. I can't fully remember. And I learned a ton, right? Like just watching how they do outreach, how they keep their, files organized, like basic things that you don't think about. I think is how I learned and how I got to where I am today. I would definitely say that if you asked me 10 years ago if I would be doing this right now, I would probably be like, no. If you asked what I'd be doing, I would also say, I don't know. But no, I kind of think there's pros and cons to starting from scratch, right? So you buy the rentals, you do the fix and flips, you see how the process works, you get the loans yourself. Okay, but then you go into it and you're like, well, this is how it was done here, but now here it's done a different way, right? Okay, well, I came in not knowing anything. So the way I've learned is the only way I know, right?
Got it.
And so I think that has helped a lot, just because I got a great foundation. And so now what I know is what I know. And it's not like, okay, well, but this person did this, right? But I did this when I bought a fix and flip. So I actually think there are pros and cons. Obviously, if I would have had a little bit more, background, I guess, or just education on it, obviously that would have been helpful. But I think, without it, I've done just fine. So
Yeah. Apparently, clearly, yeah. Hey, really quick, I need to interrupt the episode to talk about this week's sponsor, which of course is Lender. Lender is a hard and private money origination and servicing tool. So if you're currently using something like Excel to handle all of your business needs, it's about time that you upgrade to something a little bit more sophisticated like Lender. Lender helps you handle all of just the nitpicky, nuanced, tedious things that we have to do as lenders, like dealing with loan doc generation and preparation, or dealing with document storage, or collecting files from all of the borrowers and LLC docs, collecting monthly payments, and then at the end of the year having to deal with tax statements and generating 1099s and 1098s. It really is just a one-stop shop from start to finish. It helps you all the way from origination through servicing to payoff. It automatically generates payoff statements for you. You don't have to miss any extension fees or deal with prorated interest. It just, the whole system handles it for you. So if you're currently using something like Excel, I highly recommend that you upgrade to something a little bit more sophisticated just to keep your borrowers all organized, just to keep your investors in the loop. And I highly recommend it. You can check that out by going to joinlender, lendr.com, joinlender.com, and check it out. And I know it's going to transform your business just like it has mine. Now, back to the episode. Were there any like terms or vernacular or like, LTV, ARV, like those are kind of the basic ones, but like, are there like, was there anything that for a while you were just like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, like when I first started, right, there was like LTC and LTV and AR, like all these just little acronyms like DSCR, right?
Right.
I'm like when I first saw it on like the sheet of paper, I was like, oh, I'm never going to learn all this, right? Like, no way. But then like once you figure out what it means and then you actually like put it into the loan or like the loan process, it's like, oh, this makes sense. Like LTV, loan to value, right? Loan to value. But I would say that part, to be honest, was a little bit overwhelming. I also was doing this all remote, right? So I was just, having to either like Zoom with somebody to help me or just message them. So that was, it was overwhelming, but not to the point where I was like, I can't do this. Right.
Right.
And I'm a very like math brained person, numbers brain. So once I figured out that like this ratio is just pretty much a calculation, I was like, oh, I got
easy.
this.
I got this. Yeah. Especially with an economics background.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned another thing, talking about your, how you organize your loan file. I'm curious if like Conventus, is there like a particular software tool that you guys use, or like what is that organization of a file look like? What does it all contain? And what are you reviewing and looking at on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. So here at Conventus, we use Salesforce. And yes, a ton of stuff is in Salesforce, but I also think just for me personally, I like to kind of have it outside of that so I can do it exactly how I want. For me, I just use Google Docs, right? I just literally, make a spreadsheet. Most of the time I'll have the address of the loan, what stage the loan's in. So if it's pre-processing, if it's in processing, underwriting, heading to closing, right? And then I actually work very closely with my processor who will handle the actual documents that are sent. So all those title documents, all those insurance documents, the borrower's bank statements, entity docs, all of those things, my processor will actually put into a Dropbox file for me and for, I would say, the underwriters and the closers. So that way it's all in one place, very organized. So if it's a title document, it's going in the title folder, right? Mm-hmm. If it's the inspection, it's going in the inspection folder. And I just think within this business, because you could be doing 10 loans at once.
Right.
Like you could be doing so much and like you don't want one to just fall through the cracks. So I think being organized, and like for me, like I said, I mean, I keep track of all the loans I have live. I keep track of when they all close and fund. And that's just for me on a Google Doc. I probably could do something maybe a little bit more more organized, but hey, whatever works. But yeah, I mean, I think in this business, especially like you get an email about a loan and you may have not looked at that loan since the day before and you're like, wait, where am I in this process?
Right.
Then you go look and you're like, oh, okay, so we still need this, right? We've gotten this. So I think that just helps to not just be like scrambling for everything at the end.
Yeah. I think that's a good point because I pride myself in being like a fairly organized person. Like my wife, she'll send me a text and she's like, hey, do you have this? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'll send it over. And like, I can, find it in 20 seconds. But, even myself, I have found that I kind of just get in this habit of like, okay, a new loan application comes in. Yep. Everything looks good. Let's send to wire done.
Yeah.
And like, I've had to like step back and kind of build my own processes to be like, okay, no, I need to make like I even have a line by line item that says, okay, like make sure that the borrower's entity matches the entity on the purchase and sale agreement. Because I have done loan docs where I thought we were using a different entity and then it messes it all up, So like my checklist is like very nitty gritty between like do this, do this, do this, do this. And it just, like you said, when you have 10, sometimes 20 different loans going simultaneously, like it is so easy to like, there's no way to keep track. So
I think a lot of this business is kind of nitty gritty and very detailed. So like that was a perfect example. Like, okay, the purchase and sale says this entity, but you wanted to use this entity. Okay, well, like how does that work? Or the current owner entity is not the same as, the purchase and sale agreement. There's just like those things that like I feel like people don't fully think about. And then that's an item that can blow up the whole deal, right? Like
For sure.
you've got to make sure things match. You got to make sure the correct spelling. It's like very, very nitty gritty. So I think if you have a good, I guess, organizational process, I think that just helps a ton.
Yeah. Well, and then think about it too. So that obviously those two names have to match, but then also you have to say like, okay, do I have like the LLC docs for that entity? Do
Right.
I have the operating agreement for that entity? And then you have to go and look at the operating agreement and see like, are there any other signers that are in this LLC that have to be on the loan documents that they have to sign as well because they're a 50-50 partnership? There's just like, there's different levels that you have to check and verify and validate and make sure that everything is like 100% because that could cause like an issue with your title insurance later on down the road.
Right.
Like so again, I have to tell myself to step back and just be like,
It's like slow down.
Slow down. It's fine. Like check all the things, make sure it's all there, and then we can do it. But I find myself like, yep, this looks good. Let's send it through processing. Let's send the wire and be done, but it's not that easy. So for all like the non-lenders out there, I doubt anyone's listening to a lender podcast if they're not a lender, but if you're confused why your loan is taking, 15 days or 30 days or whatever it is to process, there's a lot of little things that have to be, checked at the same time. So, just to give some more insight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have, it sounds like you have separate underwriters, or do you like, how involved are you in the underwriting process yourself?
Yeah. So at Conventus, we have all of our salespeople. So that would be me. We all have a processor. So my processor is the one that, like I said, will gather the title documents from the title company. They will gather the insurance documents from the insurance company. They'll actually kind of put the file together, make sure we have, all of those initial items. And then that's when they send it to our underwriters. So we do have underwriters that will actually review the file for us as the salespeople. And that's when, we'll check on those nitty gritty, very detailed items, right? Like the loan number is, got numbers flipped. They're the ones that'll point that out and say, hey, we need to get this flipped. And so their job is probably one of the hardest because they're having to go through all of these documents saying, okay, does this match? Yes. Is this spelled correctly? Yes. I mean, I've had a ton of instances where like a comma has been missing, right? And that seems so small, but in like the big scheme of things, it's pretty big.
It's huge. Yeah.
So we do have, so we have, the salespeople, the processors, we have the underwriters, and then the underwriters will send it to the closing team. So then we have a closing team that will work with, the escrow company to actually get the docs out and get the file funded.
Got it. Do you, so I know you mentioned like Conventus lends all over the United States, like 46, 48 plus states.
Yeah.
Have you found that that's difficult to, like, for example, we just lend in our own backyard. So I know the numbers like very well. You probably know Tennessee numbers like very, very well.
Right.
But if you're based out of California, like, you could pay $800,000 for a shithole compared to, Kentucky, where you could probably find houses for $100,000 still, know? So does that make things difficult as far as your job, or is that kind of like outside the scope of what you do?
Yeah, I wouldn't say specifically for me. It makes it too hard. Obviously, I like doing loans close to me because I am familiar with the area. So I'm familiar with the houses. I'm familiar with, the price points, things like that. But I wouldn't say, for example, if I'm doing a loan in like San Diego, it's going to be that much more difficult than a Tennessee loan. And I think that's because I have a team of people that I work with. So for example, when we order the appraisal, obviously we'll use an appraiser in that area. Well, then the appraisal will come back and we have a credit team. So then the credit team is the one who will actually review the appraisal, make sure all the numbers are, accurate and where they're supposed to be. A lot of it's heavily based on comps and stuff like that. So I think, for me, when I get sent a deal and say it's in like the middle of, I've just done a couple in Indiana, right? Like the middle of Indiana. I'm like, is this house
I
actually
don't
worth
know.
$200,000? I don't
Right.
know, right? But I'm like, okay, we'll wait for the appraisal to come back, and then we'll be able to determine if it is. So I wouldn't say it's that much more complicated than doing, say something right here in my backyard. But it's definitely things to think about. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Okay. Very good. Do you I was trying to think. Oh no, I just lost my question.
Oh.
Oh. Oh, I was going to ask you. Do you have where does Conventus's capital come from? Like, do you interface with investors at all, or do you have like institutional lines of credit? Are you
Yeah.
involved in that piece at all?
So I'm not involved with that at all. Just as on the sales side. Our capital markets team is the ones who, deal with that side, but we do have a couple investors that we work with. We do have two different products. So we have, the bridge side, which is all the fix and flip, the ground up construction, things like that. We have, you know, investors for that side of things. And then we also run our DSCR program where we have investors for those as well. I believe Conventus was started in 2015. So next year will be 10 years. And yeah, we've just been growing it, through, investor relationships and things like that. So
Love it.
yeah,
Love
but to be honest, I stay far away from that side of things. So
it.
I'm super familiar with it.
Yeah, and that's a whole other,
Yeah.
like business in and of itself is just investor relations, and
Right.
we're very small relative to Conventus, I'm sure, but
Yeah.
it is like it's a full-time job just updating investors, making sure that they feel like their capital is being well utilized and it's being handled conservatively, and all
Mhm.
the above. So yeah, definitely a big aspect of it too. Are you I don't know how transparent you can or want to be, but can you talk about like rates and terms that you guys offer?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, right now on the bridge side, if you're doing a basic fix and flip, probably anywhere between 9 to 11%, depending on your experience and your credit. So I think a lot of people hear that 9 to 11%, they're like, great, I can get 9. Here we go, right? It's like,
Mm.
okay, let's take a step
Hold
back.
on.
Have you
Yeah.
done flip before? No. Okay. Your credit score is 650. Oh, okay. Right. It's like
Right.
there's other factors that kind of come into the rate we actually give you. Are you going to put 10% down? Or are you going to put 30% down? All of that plays into a factor. So I want to be clear and transparent on that, because I'll get an email, right? Like, what are your rates and terms? I'm like, okay, well,
It
anywhere,
depends.
9 to 11%, and then they're just like, okay. And so I'm like, if you can just give me your credit score and your experience, I can get you a much better
Mm.
answer on that. But yeah, for the bridge side, 9 to 11%, depending. We do new construction loans; those are probably 10 to 12%. And for us, typically, I know a couple, some other lenders charge more than 1 point, but for us, I would say across the board, we're 1 point. I mean,
Oh wow.
I probably only charged above 1 point, maybe 3 loans my entire career, and I've been here for 3 years. So I mean, that's just something to keep in mind, is that 1 point. That's all you
Wow.
got to pay. And because I just hear some other ones is like 2 points, and I'm like, okay, well, we can do one, right? But then yeah, so we have our bridge side. I would go 9 to 12%. That kind of encompasses all the loans we do. So even like the
Okay.
mixed use, the multifamily, the new construction, and the single family. And then our DSCR side, I believe our floor rate is about 5.75 right now. Yeah, about 5.75. And, that also kind of gets people really excited, because they're like, oh, 5.7. I'm like, okay, but are you going to do like 30 or 40% down? Or are you going to do like 20% down?
Right. Right.
And like, is your credit score crappy, or is it like great?
Yeah.
But I mean, I think for right now, I would say mid sixes. That would be safe, across the board, depending just obviously on your credit and the leverage and things like that. So that's pretty much where we are. They change all the time. I think about 2 months ago, our floor was at 5.5, but as we've, got through the election and things like that, it's back up to 5.75, which in my opinion still is pretty
Still,
darn
yeah.
good.
Yeah, very good.
So,
Very good.
yeah.
And then all of the like the DSCR stuff, do you keep that on the books? Does that get sold off? Is that like stay on
So
your balance sheet?
those all get sold. We work
Okay.
heavily with two separate investors, and those will get sold off. Our bridge loans, we do keep a portion of them on our own balance sheet. I think, to be honest, is maybe our more like complicated loans or that would be harder to sell. We keep those on our own balance sheet. I don't think we keep a ton on our balance sheet, but we do keep some. But our DSCR loans are all sold off.
Okay. And then what's what are your term lengths on fix and flip bridge type stuff or new construction?
Yeah, so we have a standard 12 month, just like probably any
Most
bridge lender.
lenders. Yeah.
Yeah, and those are interest only, no prepayment penalty. We do offer up to 24 months. However, on the bridge side, I will say for us, that'll come with a 12-month minimum interest prepayment penalty. So you want to get out of the loan in 9 months? Okay, that's fine, but you got to pay 12 months worth of interest. So I always recommend people just wait till the 13th month and then you're good, right?
Right. Right.
And so, yeah, we have a 12-month, an 18-month, and a 24-month. 18 would be a 9 month. So we just cut it in half, and then that's kind of the prepayment penalty. And then, yeah, on the DSCR side, our most popular 30-year fixed, of course. But we do actually have a 10-year interest-only option, which some people like. And then we do run a 7-to-1 arm and a 5-to-1 arm. Those are a lot more rare. I don't see a ton of those hardly at all. But yeah, so those are pretty much what we have.
Wow. Okay, so you guys have a lot of different loan products. That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah, we can do a lot.
Most of the lenders that I speak with is like they only do fix and flip, and like myself included. That's all we do is fix and flip, and our rates and fees are significantly higher than that. Like we're closer to 3 points typically. So
wow. Yeah.
Because my personal philosophy is I would rather do fewer loans and make more origination of fees than try and just like churn through these loans, because like, as you know, like it is hard to find good borrowers, you know? And so like we try and compete on speed instead of like fees and rates. Like I can close and fund a loan in 3 days if we absolutely have to.
Right.
So,
That's awesome.
There's lots of different ways that you can do it and cater to it. But
yeah. Well, and I think sounds like for you, like you are pretty much the only one involved in that process, right? So you're not waiting on somebody else. You're not having to chase after some, So I mean, again, I think there's pros and cons to everything in life, not just obviously lending. But I mean, for you, it's like, okay, like if you want to get it done, you're going to get it done. I know for me, it's like, okay, well, I gotta wait for the underwriter to get the file back, or I gotta wait for the credit to review the appraisal, things like that. So no, I totally get that, and if it works for you, then it works for you, right?
I mean, I don't know if I'd say it's working, but it's something, that's for sure. But I am the originator, I'm the underwriter, I am the servicer. Like we do everything. So, as we grow and expand, like the hope is to, build out a team and have some different loan processors and things like that. But, for now, that's been it.
Yeah, that's crazy. I couldn't imagine doing all of it.
I know it's a lot, but we, you got to start somewhere, and I'm sure Conventus started with 1 or 2 people, and then they just grown and scaled too. So maybe 10 years from now, I'll hire my own Ellen fresh out of school.
Yeah,
so.
There you go. Yeah. There's a lot of us.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Ellen, I want to be conscious of your time. Seriously, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Of course.
Before we go ahead and kind of pitch any of your socials, any of your phone number, email, anything. If anybody from the podcast that's listening wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, definitely connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram is so real estate loans with Ellen. Definitely give me a follow there. You can send me a message there, or send me a text message. My number is 615-585-2691. Those are probably the best ways to meet me. And if you heard me through this podcast, let me know, and I will offer a $0 processing fee on your first loan with us at Conventus. So,
oh wow, how's that? Yep. I love it. Perfect. And definitely, absolutely, if you're trying to level up your social media game, for sure, go ahead and check out Ellen's Instagram, because it's I'm definitely going to be stealing a couple things, and so it's very good. She's got good design, good graphics, good everything. So definitely check that out. Ellen, seriously, thank you so much for being here, and For anybody else that's listening, thanks for listening to this episode of the Lender Podcast, and we will chat with you next week.